Part 1. Samadhi Pada. Samadhi means yoga, and yoga means samadhi. This pada therefore explains the significance of yoga as well as of samadhi. Both mean profound meditation and supreme devotion. For aspirants endowed with perfect physical health, mental poise, discriminative intelligence, and a spiritual bent, Patanjali provides guidance in the disciplines of practice and detachment to help them attain the spiritual zenith, the vision of the soul. That's Atma Darsana. The word chitta has often been translated as mind. In the West, it is considered that mind not only has the power of conation or volition, cognition and motion, but also that of discrimination. But chitta really means consciousness. Indian philosophers analyzed chitta and divided it into three facets: mind, or manas, intelligence, or buddhi, and ego, or the sense of self, ahamkara. They divided the mental body into two parts: the mental sheath and the intellectual sheath. People have thus come to think of consciousness and mind as the same. In this work, consciousness refers both to the mental sheath, that's Manomaya Kosha, as mind, and the intellectual sheath, that's Vijnanamaya Kosha, as wisdom. Mind acquires knowledge objectively, whereas intelligence learns through subjective experience, which becomes wisdom. As cosmic intelligence is the first principle of nature, so consciousness is the first principle of man. Sutra 1.1. Atta Yoganushasanam. Atta means now, auspiciousness, a prayer, a blessing, benediction, authority, a good omen. Yoga means joining, union, junction, combination, application, use, means, result, deep meditation, concentration, contemplation of the Supreme Spirit. Anushasanam means advice, direction, order, command, instructions, laying down rules and precepts, a revised text, introduction, or guide given in procedural form. Thus it means guidance in the codes of conduct which are to be observed, and which form the base from which to cultivate one's ethical and spiritual life. Atta Yoganushasanam. With prayers for divine blessings, now begins an exposition of the sacred art of yoga. Now follows a detailed exposition of the discipline of yoga, given step by step, in the right order, and with proper direction for self-alignment. Patanjali is the first to offer us a codification of yoga, its practice and precepts, and the immediacy of the new light he is shedding on a known and ancient subject is emphasized by his use of the word now. His reappraisal, based on his own experience, explores fresh ground and bequeaths us a lasting monumental work. In the cultural context of his time, his words must have been crystal clear, and even to the spiritually impoverished modern mind, they are never confused, although they are often most impenetrably condensed. The word now can also be seen in the context of a progression from Patanjali's previous works, his treatise on grammar and on Ayurveda. Logically, we must consider these to predate the Yoga Sutras, as grammar is a prerequisite of lucid speech and clear comprehension, and Ayurvedic medicine of bodily cleanliness and inner equilibrium. Together, these works served as preparation for Patanjali's crowning exposition of yoga, the cultivation and eventual transcendence of consciousness, culminating in liberation from the cycles of rebirth. These works are collectively known as Moksha Shastras, meaning spiritual sciences, treatises which trace man's evolution from physical and mental bondage toward ultimate freedom. A treatise on yoga flows naturally from the Ayurvedic work and guides the aspirant, or sadhaka, to a trained and balanced state of consciousness. In this first chapter, Patanjali analyzes the components of consciousness and its behavioral patterns, and explains how its fluctuations can be stilled in order to achieve inner absorption and integration. In the second, he reveals the whole linking mechanism of yoga, by means of which ethical conduct, bodily vigor and health, and physiological vitality are built into the structure of the human evolutionary progress towards freedom. In the third chapter, Patanjali prepares the mind to reach the soul. In the fourth, he shows how the mind dissolves into the consciousness, and the consciousness into the soul, and how the sadhaka drinks the nectar of immortality. The Brahma Sutra, a treatise dealing with Vedanta philosophy, which is the knowledge of Brahman, also begins with the word Atha, or now. Attato Brahma Jinyasa. There, now stands for the desire to know Brahman. Brahman is dealt with as the object of study, and is discussed and explored throughout as the object. In the Yoga Sutras, it is the seer or the true self who is to be discovered and known. Yoga is therefore considered to be a subjective art, science, and philosophy. Yoga has various connotations, as mentioned at the outset, but here it stands for Samadhi, the indivisible state of existence. So this sutra may be taken to mean the disciplines of integration are here expounded through experience, and are given to humanity for the exploration and recognition of that hidden part of man which is beyond the awareness of the senses. Sutra 1.2 Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga means union or integration from the outermost layer to the innermost self, that is, from the skin to the muscles, bones, nerves, mind, intellect, will, consciousness, and self. Chitta means consciousness, which is made up of three factors: mind or manas, intellect or buddhi, and ego, ahamkara. Chitta is the vehicle of observation, attention, aims, and reason. It has three functions: cognition, conation or volition, and motion. Vritti means state of mind, fluctuations in mind, course of conduct, behavior, a state of being, mode of action, movement, function, operation. Nirodha means obstruction, stoppage, opposition, annihilation, restraint, control, cessation. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of movements in the consciousness. Yoga is defined as restraint of fluctuations in the consciousness. It is the art of studying the behavior of consciousness, which has three functions: cognition, conation or volition, and motion. Yoga shows ways of understanding the functionings of the mind and helps to quieten their movements, leading one towards the undisturbed state of silence, which dwells in the very seat of consciousness. Yoga is thus the art and science of mental discipline, through which the mind becomes cultured and matured. This vital sutra contains the definition of yoga, the control or restraint of the movement of consciousness, leading to their complete cessation. Chitta is the vehicle which takes the mind, manas, toward the soul, atma. Yoga is the cessation of all vibration in the seat of consciousness. It is extremely difficult to convey the meaning of the word chitta, because it is the subtlest form of cosmic intelligence, meaning Mahat. Mahat is the great principle, the source of the material world of nature, or Prakriti, as opposed to the soul, which is an offshoot of nature. According to Sankhya philosophy, creation is affected by the mingling of Prakriti and Purusha, the cosmic soul. This view of cosmology is also accepted by the Yoga philosophy. The principles of Purusha and Prakriti are the source of all action, volition, and silence. Words such as Chitta, Buddhi, and Mahat are so often used interchangeably that the student can easily become confused. One way to structure one's understanding is to remember that every phenomenon which has reached its full evolution or individuation has a subtle or cosmic counterpart. Thus we translate Buddhi as the individual discriminating intelligence and consider Mahat to be its cosmic counterpart. Similarly, the individuated consciousness Chitta is matched by its subtle form Chit. For the purpose of self-realization, the highest awareness of consciousness and the most refined faculty of intelligence have to work so much in partnership that it is not always useful to split hairs by separating them. The thinking principle or conscience, that's antakarana, links the motivating principle of nature, mahat, to individual consciousness, which can be thought of as a fluid enveloping ego, that's ahamkara, intelligence, buddhi, and mind, manas. This fluid tends to become cloudy and opaque due to its contact with the external world via three components. The sadhaka's aim is to bring the consciousness to a state of purity and translucence. It is important to note that consciousness not only links evolved or manifest nature to non-evolved or subtle nature, it is also closest to the soul itself, which does not belong to nature, but merely immanent in it. Buddhi possesses the decisive knowledge which is determined by perfect action and experience. Manas gathers and collects information through the five senses of perception, jnanendriyas, and the five organs of action, karmendriyas. Cosmic intelligence, ego, individual intelligence, mind, the five senses of perception, and the five organs of action are the products of the five elements of nature: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, or Prithvi, Ap, Tejas, Vayu, and Akasha, with their infra-atomic qualities of smell, taste, form or sight, touch, and sound, that is, Gandha, Rasa, Rupa, Sparsha, and Shabda. In order to help man to understand himself, the sages analyzed human beings as composed of five sheaths or koshas. The first sheath, anatomical, that's Annamaya. Its corresponding element is earth. The second sheath is physiological, Pranamaya. Its corresponding element is water. The third sheath is mental, Manomaya. Its corresponding element is fire. The fourth sheath is intellectual, Vijnanamaya. Its corresponding element is air. And the fifth sheath is blissful, Anandamaya. Its corresponding element is ether. The first three sheaths are within the field of the elements of nature. The intellectual sheath is said to be the layer of the individual soul, or the Jivatman, and the blissful sheath the layer of the universal soul, that's Param Atman. In effect, all five sheaths have to be penetrated to reach emancipation. The innermost content of the sheaths, beyond even the blissful body, is Purusha, the indivisible, non-manifest one, the void which is full. This is experienced in Nirbija Samadhi, whereas Sabija Samadhi is experienced at the level of the blissful body. If Ahamkara, meaning ego, is considered to be one end of a thread, then Antar-Atma, meaning universal self, is the other end. Antakarana, meaning conscious, is the unifier of the two. The practice of yoga integrates a person through the journey of intelligence and consciousness from the external to the internal. It unifies him from the intelligence of the skin to the intelligence of the self, so that his self merges with the cosmic self. This is the merging of one half of one's being, or Prakriti, with the other, that's Purusha. Through yoga, the practitioner learns to observe and to think, and to intensify his effort until eternal joy is attained. This is possible only when the vibrations of the individual chitta are arrested before they emerge. Yoga, the restraint of fluctuating thought, leads to a sattvic state. But in order to restrain the fluctuations, force of will is necessary. Hence, a degree of rajas is involved. Restraint of the movements of thought brings about stillness, which leads to deep silence with awareness. This is the sattvic nature of the chitta. Stillness is concentration, or dharana, and silence is meditation, or dhyana. Concentration needs a focus or a form, and this focus is ahamkara, one's own small individual self. When concentration flows into meditation, that self loses its identity and becomes one with the great self. Like two sides of a coin, ahamkara and atma are two opposite poles in man. The sadhaka is influenced by the self on the one hand, and by objects perceived on the other. When he is engrossed in the subject, his mind fluctuates, This is vritti. His aim should be to distinguish the self from the objects seen, so that it does not become enmeshed by them. Through yoga, he should try to free his consciousness from the temptations of such objects and bring it closer to the seer. Restraining the fluctuations of the mind is a process which leads to an end, Samadhi. Initially, yoga acts as the means of restraint. When the sadhaka has attained a total sense of restraint, yogic discipline is accomplished and the end is reached. The consciousness remains pure. Thus, yoga is both the means and the end. Sutra 1.3 Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. Tada means then, at that time. Drashtu means the soul, the seer. Swarupe means in his own, in his state. Avasthanam means rests, abides, dwells, resides, radiates. Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. Then the seer dwells in his own true splendor. When the waves of consciousness are stilled and silenced, they can no longer distort the true expression of the soul. Revealed in his own nature, the radiant seer abides in his own grandeur. Volition being the mode of behavior of the mind, it is liable to change our perception of the state and condition of the seer from moment to moment. When it is restrained and regulated, a reflective state of being is experienced. In this state, knowledge dawns so clearly that the grandeur of the seer is seen and felt. This vision of the soul radiates without any activity on the part of citta. Once it is realized, the soul abides in its own seat.